All right, welcome to our study on the book of Romans. This is the Romans Education Part 2, and this is session 23. What we're going to do is we're going to look right off the bat at the last verse in this section. And if you can recall, when we started this back in verse 3 of chapter 12, the section for godly wisdom ran from verse 3 to verse 16. Verse 16 is where we're going to be today. So this is going to be the last verse in godly wisdom, and then next week we're going to be in justice. And so those of you who, I know that we sent out those digital files for those books. If you haven't printed those out, please print those out. Please, please, please. Don't let it fall by the wayside. Because there are things that not only are in that book that's going to be very helpful to you during these lessons, but be helpful to you during the week as you're trying to transfer this from data in your head to actually reality in your heart. And so please print those out. Go to the trouble to do that. If you have a problem, you just cannot do it, please let me know. I don't want you to be without this resource. All right, so let's take a look at this verse, Romans chapter 12 and verse 16. Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits. And now we're going to go back to your note taker. Actually, this is last week's note taker. If you remember, in your books, I actually mistakenly put this in session 22. So go back to the front of session 22 in your books, and we're going to fill in verse 16. And here's what that looks like right here. So verse 3 through 10 was our attitude toward the local assembly. Verse 11, that went out into the business world. Verse 12, our attitude toward tribulations. Verse 13, our attitude toward giving. Hospitality is included in that. Verse 14 is our attitude toward our enemies, what our Father wants us to do in relation to them. Verse 15 was our attitude toward the circumstances of others, where the Bible talked about rejoicing with those that rejoice and weeping with those who weep. And now verse 16, our attitude toward those of low estate. And so we're going to define our terms when we get over into the study today. So let me take you back. Now, everybody knows where that is in your note taker. That is in session 22. So you won't have this among the note takers that you have. Page 100. Thank you. So that'll get everybody on the same page, literally. So now let's go back to the verse, and we're going to take this a phrase at a time and work our way through it. Be of the same mind one toward another. And so that phrase right there, be of the same mind one toward another, that takes the context of this now out from the world at large out there and brings it back into the local assembly, because they're the only ones that you can be of one mind with. And so so I just want to set that we're talking about back in the assembly of the folks that are a part of this. Now, what does it mean when it says be of the same mind one toward another? There's a lot of ideas about this verse. I'm going to give you several of them here. They're worth mentioning, but I don't think they quite hit the bullseye. But let's take a look at them and discuss them one by one. The first one is, be of the same mind means to enter into each other's circumstances in order to see how you would feel yourself if you were going through those circumstances. Now, look, there's not anything in error about that. You know, we talk about putting ourselves in someone else's shoes and seeing how that feels. But really, what's going on here in verse 16 has more in mind than just that. And I want you to remember that previous verse, because I told you last time, these two are connected. Rejoice with them that do rejoice and weep with those that weep is connected to this. So that while that's a good thought, that's not a complete thought in my mind about what's going on in verse 16. Another idea says that to be of the same mind one toward another means to be agreed in your opinions and in your views. Again, I don't think that's really the intent of what Paul has here. Look, is it a good thing when people view things the same way? I mean, it certainly can be. But Paul's not really talking about your opinion here. Make sure that everybody's opinion is your opinion. That's not the idea, and that's why I say I kind of think this misses the mark. There's another one that says, be of the same mind one toward another means what you regard or seek for yourself, you should want for others. And so that you don't have divided interests. In other words, you're not working toward different ends. You don't have different goals in mind. You're not seeking, I said this in your book, you're not seeking for honors that you would not want for your brethren as well. Well, okay, that's a little further too, and I understand that, and all that's good as far as that goes. Still don't think that we've come to what verse 16 is talking about here, because all three sentences in this verse are connected, and they're in the same context. And so because of that, I think there are three parts to the whole of what verse 16 is saying. So that's why I think all of these things, while they may be good, I think they're at least incomplete. So what else can we think of that this would be of the same mind one toward another? There's one more erroneous thought. Now this one is just wrong. When people think this, they are trying to have a good motive about it, but the truth is it's just not true. And that is to think that everybody in the assembly is equal and the same. That's just not true. I mean, you can say that, but I'm going to show you some ways in which that's not true. And as a matter of fact, understanding that concept is at the heart of understanding what verse 16 is really all about. Because the truth is, not everybody in the assembly they're not identical, and they're not equal in every way that would affect their edification. Those are the things now that we're going to be talking about. And so it means, and by the way, in your book, I need you to add a word. It's just a little word, so it's not that big a deal, but it happens to be the word not, which kind of changes the... So if you look, I don't know what page you're on. Okay, if you look at the paragraph that says, so what does it mean to be of the same mind one toward another? It does not mean that we think everybody in the assembly is equal, for the fact is they are not. Now the sentence we're going to correct is the next one. Being of the same mind with one another does not mean that we do not acknowledge the differences between us. Paragraph 2. All right, page 115, paragraph 2. Do not acknowledge. Okay. Yeah. Okay, there you go. Very good. No, that's great. Yeah, okay. So I've already got a do, just add the NT, don't. All right. And so it's not just the differences that we have that Paul is going to address here in verse 16, but he's also talking about some inequalities. And by the way, now I'm going to take you back to your note taker, because that is where this is going to show up. So if you'll see it in yellow there, right between those pictures, that's where it gets filled in on your note taker. Paul is going to talk about some inequalities which may present a hindrance to the sonship education of some members of the assembly. That's really the thing that he has in mind. When he's talking about having the same mind one toward another, he is not saying, hey, we're all equal, we're all the same, we're all identical, and that's the way we're supposed to think about everybody. No, actually, to do what he's asking you to do, to be of the same mind, you're going to have to recognize that there are some things that are a hindrance to the sonship education for some folks. It is true, though, that we are not going to allow those differences or those inequalities to cause a schism in this body. Everybody understands what I'm saying about that? Just because someone has an issue that makes it more difficult for them, or maybe makes it easier for them, that's not the thing that we're going to get all worked up over. Every member is going to be important, and those that seem to be, in fact, Paul's going to say this, less honorable, we're going to bestow more abundant honor upon them, because we understand that there is something going on there, something that could discourage them in their sonship life, discourage them in being conformed to the image of God's Son. Okay, so having the same mind means this: we do have the same goal for every member. So while we understand that not everybody is the same, we want everyone to achieve the same result, to get the same benefit, to be being edified unto godliness. And so being of the same mind means don't allow anything to impact your thinking or your fellowship with the other members of the assembly so that it hinders that in some way. All right, so this issue of being of the same mind really goes back to esteeming and valuing and esteeming every single member of the assembly. So now let's go to the next phrase in this verse, in Romans 12:16. Be of the same mind one toward another, mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. And we'll read that last phrase when we get to that in the study. Now, here's where we really need to define some terms. Because when you see these terms in our vocabulary, they kind of automatically, I don't know, I just have a bunch of stuff rattling around in my head this morning. And every time I'm looking at this, I want to illustrate it. But it's an aside, so I'm going to resist the rabbit trail. Okay. Whew, that was close. All right. High things, condescend, low estate, and conceits. Some of those terms we automatically think in a certain way about that. And so Paul sets high things in contrast to low estate, and that's going to kind of help us, knowing that is going to help us define that term. So when Paul talks about a person's estate, he's not really talking about their property or possessions. We would think that naturally. If someone had, a mansion sitting on a large property, we would say, high estate. But that's not what Paul has in mind here. And we would think of those that didn't have anything, someone who was poor and maybe had no home, we would think of them as low estate. And that's the way that we kind of measure that. Now, to communicate those things, that's certainly part of that definition. But in this context, Paul is talking about people in a more personal way. And if we look at it the way he looks about it, that's going to have a bearing on how we think about those folks and how we treat them. And so the thing that Paul has in mind is this. He has in mind their spiritual capacity. Because all of this, folks, is tied to what God is trying to do with us. And what is it that he wants done with us? He wants us edified unto godliness. Say that another way. He wants us edified unto godliness. What's another way to say that? He wants us conformed to the image of his Son. Somebody give me another one. He wants us transformed. Give me another one. He wants
fully
to walk in
educated
newness
sons and
of
daughters.
life. Linda's really reaching now. All right, but that's good. That's right. Walking in newness of life, which is that resurrection life. Give me another term. We talk about it all the time.
Us being educated sons and daughters.
Okay, all right, being educated sons and daughters. Somebody give me another one.
Edification of our inner man.
Okay, the edification of our inner man. Okay, okay. So
spiritually fit.
all right. Okay. Well, he's made us. He's certainly made us spiritually fit, so that this can take place. But look, here's the other things that I'm after. Look, all those things that you said are right. And by the way, can this doctrine work in you without you filling in these last couple of blanks that I want you to fill in? Of course it can. But I want you to have this in your thinking so that all of these things are in your mind, so that because they all work to inform your thinking in a little different way. And one of those is Christ formed in you. Now you are in Christ, and as you are in Christ, you are complete in Him. That all has to do with your standing and your status before God. But what it doesn't have to do with being in Christ is the edification of your soul. What it doesn't have to do with is your maturity in your sanctified life, in your everyday functional life. And so, yes, being conformed to the image of God's Son and being edified in our inner man, Christ being formed in you. And so I know that's sitting further over, but we keep talking about these terms because what I want you to see is, you have to understand it this way. As you respond to this doctrine in verse 16 today, it's just a little thing. It's just one little thing on top of all those other little things that came before. It's the little thing that goes on top of rejoicing with them that rejoice and weeping with those that weep. Those are little things that pile on top of not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, which is another little thing which is piled on top of everything that we have been learning. And all of those little things begin to pile up, and you know what they begin to do? They begin to transform your inner man. They begin to conform you to the image of God's Son. They begin to form Christ in your inner man so that the life of Christ is made manifest. I left off the made for space here. The life of Christ is made manifest in our mortal body. And that, folks, is the mystery of godliness. That's what edification is all about. And so those are the two last things that I wanted you to have in your thinking. Don't think about it, because if you think about it this way, then you will steer away from, I have to act like Jesus. I mean, there's a sense in which you can say that, but the more theologically correct way, the more practically spiritually accurate way to think about that is not us acting like Him, as it is allowing Him to act in us. Everybody gets that, right? That's a critical difference. Someone says that's just semantics. No, it's way more than that. It's not just using the words. It is the difference between God living in you and you trying to do what you think He might do. The power source for one of those is your flesh. The power source for the other one is grace. Big difference. Those are not just semantics. Okay, so with that in mind, I've kind of lost my place, so let me get back here. So we're defining these terms here. And so what we're looking at is that there may be some in this assembly right now. They may be sitting in this room. may be joining us on Zoom, or you may be watching this on the recorded video later. You consider yourself to be part of this assembly. Now, if that is the case, then there will be some who will necessitate, require that the rest of the assembly take a look at the things that are going on with them and identifying some kind of an obstacle, some kind of a hindrance that would keep them from being edified to stay up with the group. Something going on with them which would keep Christ from being formed in them. Something going on that would hinder the life of Christ being made manifest in their mortal body. Now that may start with, I start to say time out, let me show you this, but it's just directly connected. I put this up last week because this is one of the most important things I have ever told you. And if you get this down, it will make all the difference in your edification. What we're doing right here today on Sunday is you are being confronted by or made aware of the doctrine. That's what we're talking about here in verse 16. I'm going to lead you to a proper understanding of the doctrine, which is why we went through those first things about what does it mean to be of the same mind one toward another. And someone says it's this, well that's good, but that's not all of it, and it's that or it's that. And then we talked about what it's not. Now we're talking about what it is. And so after you get an understanding of the doctrine, then you'll understand what the purpose of that is. And the purpose of this doctrine is to be able to knit this assembly together and bind us together as a body so that we can actually function that way. And so knowing, now that's what's happening here on Sunday. But when you go home from here, you're going to have to engage with the doctrine on some level if it's actually going to take root in your heart and bear fruit in your life, if I can say it that way. And that means you're going to have to spend some time with your Heavenly Father talking to Him about this doctrine. Okay, again, a lot of stuff rattling around in my head. I'm not going to resist this one because this is right on point. Once you really begin to understand this process. Look, has there ever been a verse of Scripture where you've looked at it and you've read it and you kind of had this thought about it and you just, it'd been that way for years, and then one day you don't know what, but you learned something else, and then you come back and you look at that and now you go, oh my goodness, that's what was there. So what I'm going to say to you is, in the same way, as you learn to engage in real sonship prayer, there will come a time. In the beginning, I know it's you're saying it's. I'm going to talk about this in the quick Q&A. I'm going to show you one thing in the Q&A about this. So remind me, and you can do that by saying to me. The purpose of sonship prayer. If you'll just remind me of that. That's all I need. And it won't take me a long time to do it, but it's important for you to see it. Because as you go through this process of engaging with your Heavenly Father with regard to the doctrine, and you have to get that doctrine in your thinking. And now I'm not going to go through this whole process. I did that last week. But as you go through this process, out the other side is going to come you putting into action what you have been discussing with your Heavenly Father in a real conversation. And I want to do a whole session, probably take the second session one day and do this in the not too distant future. But I want to show you the difference between how we have been praying before and how that is so incongruous with the relationship and the intimacy that your Father wants to have with you, and then show you how Paul has laid this out and how you're going to see that that is the natural way that you would sit down with your earthly father and have a conversation. Who sits down with their earthly father and has a list of stuff for him to do? And we call that fellowship. Who does that? When you sit down with your earthly father, oh, I'm sorry, getting all worked up. When we sit down with our earthly father, look, I can't remember a time sitting down with my dad. And listen, and by the way, prayer has purpose behind it. It's not just like, I know for a lot of people, prayer is just kind of like visitation. You know, they're just, you know, catching up, chilling out, and hanging out together. Okay, if that's how you view that relationship with your father, okay. But you do understand that he has you here for a purpose, right? So if you have that purpose in mind and you're talking to him, I never sat down with my earthly dad. Now you say, well, it's your earthly dad. He wasn't omnipotent. Yes, but everybody listening, or at least most of the people listening to my voice, understand what God is and is not doing today. And that has been a result of, you know, we had to kind of undo all that stuff we had in the past, because we asked God to do a bunch of stuff, and when he didn't do it, we wondered why he didn't do it. But instead of really wondering about that, we just kind of passed it off, and we just kind of this is why the world is so critical of us, because we just look like sheep that don't think about what we're doing, and it looks foolish to them. Now, I know that faith to them is foolish, but look, you understand, there's a reason that God is asking you to do this way. He wants to accomplish some things. That's why we're going to labor with him. Wouldn't it be great to actually be talking to him about those things? Okay, all right. So I got off. I'll come back to that another time. But I'm just saying, can you just stop and think for a moment, if your earthly dad called you in because there was something that you were working on together? All right, I'm just going to say one more thing about it. Some people understand this, they really do, because they have maybe been in the business world, and they really understand this. There are people that help in the Bible Institute. In fact, there's a bunch of people that help in the Bible Institute. I was counting this up the other day, and I know I didn't get a complete list in my head, but when I thought about folks like Mark that are sitting back here actually doing something to make this, happen. When I think about Eric being up there in Pennsylvania, and now I've started naming names. That's very dangerous, because don't get your feelings hurt if I don't name your name, because I'm going to name any more names, okay? And I know there's way more than two people, but you know what? We have things that go on somewhere else. We have, we have folks that give so that this can happen. We have people who are part of the accelerated education program. We have people who are writing the scripts and putting together things for all those children's videos. And we have a lot of different things that are going on in a lot of different places. And the other day I was writing, and I was just kind of going through a list in my head off the cuff, and I could think of 41 people who are actually doing a job somewhere in all that ministry. Specifically, 41 people. I know the list is bigger than that, because if I actually wrote it down, have you ever done that? You're trying to think of things, and then when you actually write the list down, you go, oh, well, that's more than I thought. And I know it's more than that. And so I'm really glad for every bit of that, and most of those people understand this concept. If I ask them to help do something by doing this or doing that, they are really good. I don't know if I don't know why, but you know what? Evidently they are aware enough that don't pass jobs back up the ladder. Now, I've worked in businesses where that happened, where you gave someone a job, and then they didn't do the job, and then you had to go find out why the job didn't get done, and then you had to figure out for them how to now do that job. only to come back later and check on that job again and maybe even get involved in that job, so that what was the use of giving that job out in the first place? Now, Larry Howes is with the Lord, but you know what? If he can hear what we're saying here, I'm just going to brag on him a moment, because Larry he's not the only one. He was really good, because he and I did the conversation this way. I talked about jobs as being like monkeys. You ever had you know the expression, monkey on your back? Don't tell me I'm the only one old enough that knows what that is. Is that a southern expression, Barbara? Are you not familiar with that from the north? Y'all not have monkeys up north? You don't have monkeys? Okay, all right. Okay, do we? Yeah, that's right. So here's the thing. So if I've got a job, I would talk to Larry. I'd say, I got this monkey, and I would like for you to feed and care for this monkey. So I'm giving you the monkey. But you know what? If the monkey, if he doesn't feed, and he always did, and and when he would call, he would go, sometimes he would go this, I'm not giving you your monkey back, but I have a question about the monkey. Okay. And so he's really good about that. When we're refurbishing at Glen Rose, and the folks that are involved in that, and Bob Summers and Trent Summers and Pete Gardner have been, and I'm sure there's some folks that have been helping them, but I'm just saying, they kind of took over that whole transformation thing in Glen Rose, and I'm very grateful for that. You know why? It means I didn't have to take time to go get involved in that. I can keep doing what I'm doing. Mark is really good here about doing that. He never takes advantage of our friendship by giving me the monkey back. In fact, Mark is really good about pulling monkeys back out of my hands, because my natural default is to kind of hang on to a monkey if it's a one I really like and pet it a little bit. And Mark is going, just don't get involved in that. We'll handle it. You got to have that. Now, I do miss a couple of monkeys. And you say, well, what would that be? You know what? I love what we're doing with the kids stuff. It's a monkey I don't need, but Richard is exactly right. I can't fully feed and care for that monkey. And so we got people that do that. But you know what? I do want to go by every once in a while and just pick it up and hold it for a minute, because I just like doing that kid stuff. But you know what? Adam's really good about keeping the monkeys away from me.
You just need to visit it. You don't need to pet it.
Yeah, okay, all right. So you know what? And that's what and by the way, let me use Richard's illustration there. So every once in a while, Adam and I talk about what's going on. But boy, I just look over that fence and I think, look at those monkeys. I would just, all right. Now, let me get back on track. Everybody in this ministry is pretty good about not handing those jobs back up the ladder, because then things stop getting done. And so if everybody does what they're doing, so now what I'm saying to you is, if we're trying to do everything that we can to make this being conformed to God, the image of God's Son, the life of Christ being manifest in our mortal body, Christ being formed in you, transformed in your inner man, edified unto godliness, maturing in grace. We're trying to make all of that as easy as possible, so that you don't feel like you have to invent the process to be able to do that. And that's why we gave you that process. So what I want to do is I want to come back here to these notes and kind of get myself back on track here, because, and by the way, that's what the accelerated education is about. Let me tie it back into the verse. We're going to see something in someone who comes into this assembly that has some kind of issue that will hinder them in this process that we're all supposed to be headed toward. Remember, being of the same mind one toward another is that we all want to get to the same place and enjoy the same benefit of the same edification. We all want to be conformed to the image of God's Son. We all want Christ formed in our inner man. We all want the life of God's Son to be made manifest in our mortal body, right? But then there's going to be some things that are going to happen that are going to keep that from being a reality. And we have to be able to identify that. So we did that. We actually looked and thought, what will happen if somebody comes in the door here and they're kind of new to all of this and they want to stick in here? What happens if somebody wants to join us on Zoom? Yeah, I mean, but here's the thing. With all the things that they have missed, they may not have a frame of reference for understanding some of the things that we say. So you know what we did? We put together all these teams in what we're calling the Accelerated Education Program, so that in just a short amount of time, we can catch them up. And then you folks all got involved in this to say, we will help in this process. We'll engage in this process. You know what you did? You took a bunch of monkeys off my back, but not only that, you are doing exactly what this verse is talking about. You are now being of the same mind one with another, and you are condescending to men of low estate. Low estate doesn't mean they're a bad person or they're an undesirable. It's not talking about their character, or their cleanliness. This is all in the context of edification. So if you see that there's going to be a difficulty somewhere, then what we want to do is we want to solve that so that they can come along with us. I talked to a man this week. First time I've ever talked to him or had any communication with him. And spent a little time with him on the phone, and he said, I have so many questions I want to ask. And I said, then you should come out and visit. And he said, yeah, I want to do that. And he said, and I will do that. He said, but one of the things I wanted to ask you is, how do you keep track of where people are in the doctrine so that people don't get left behind? That's a good question. And you say, so what was the answer to that? The answer has many components to it. What we do is first of all, we do everything that we can to give folks an opportunity that if there's anything that they don't understand or they're not certain about, to be able to ask about that. The second session today is the Q&A about the lesson today, not anything in the Bible you want to discuss. This is about what the doctrine that we're going through now. And you have that opportunity. And if you say, I'm just too shy, I can't ask it, then I know if you're on Zoom, type a message to Eric and say, ask this question for me. And he'll do it. We'll find out later who you are. No, I'm kidding, of course. So just say, hey, ask this question for me. Maybe you don't have a microphone. Ask this question for me. You know what? You can email us, and we'll get back to you. You know what? You can call the 800 number. We give that out all the time. It's on everything we do. There is no reason for anyone to have that question. And then we give you a resource to make that as easy. Now I'm getting back to where I was a while ago. A resource to make that as easy as possible, so that you have ways that if you're looking at this and you're not quite up to speed on it, then if you feel like you're not up to speed on it, then there's a lot of things that you can do to get up to speed, and we will help you do that. Now, I was going to enumerate them again, but it's not important to do that. So there are some differences that we need to be prepared to think about, and let me give them to you now. Back to your note taker. One of those are mental capacity differences. Not everybody has the same mental capacity. That is not an insult to anybody. People are just different. I'm going to be honest with you. When I stand up here and do what I'm doing, people probably not that they think that there's very much to it, but it's easy to appear smarter than you really are because you have time to prepare. But let me just say this. I am in that slower group. It takes me a while to figure it out. I would love to be able to say to you, my mind works so that I very easily recognize patterns and I see things that, processes. I don't know if that makes me left-brained or right-brained or no-brained. But whatever it is, I got it. Now, Keith Blades, many of you knew Keith. Keith had this amazing ability to see things in the Scripture that kind of fit together, and he noticed those the patterns in there and principles. I'll tell you, someone else has the ability to do that, and that's John Schallenberger. John really has a unique ability to see those things and to put those things together. I don't. It takes me a long time. I just come around to things slowly. It just takes me a while. And then when I finally discover it, I go, wow, why couldn't I have seen that before? Can I just give you a very quick example of this? So you ever look at the route that they took, that the children of Israel took when they came out of Egypt and they crossed the Red Sea, and then they go up, and there's a certain way that they went. And remember, they didn't go straight up into Israel. They actually came along this way and came through the descendants of Esau's territory and all of that. And then God gave them a command, said, no, don't bother them, just keep going up. But in Bashan, or Bashan, however you want to say that, you know what? They had to go up there, and they had to do something up there before they were allowed to cross over Jordan and get into the land. When you're studying you know what? I didn't get this, so I started really looking at the path that the Lord was going to take at his second advent, because he's going to mirror that path. And when I was looking at that, suddenly it occurred to me, out of the blue, I don't know why, most of you probably have known this for the last 50 years, but I did not. Do you remember when the 12 spies went into Canaan and they came back and they brought the report and they said, oh, it's a land flowing to milk and honey, remember? It's lush, it's fertile, it's green, man, it's wonderful, but there's a problem. And what was the problem? There were giants in the land. And so you know what? Joshua and Caleb, two guys, go, yeah, we can take them. You know what they were thinking? We watched our God part the Red Sea. We've seen that. We saw what he did to Pharaoh. We saw those plagues. Our God, we can do this. This is the land he promises. This is where we're going. What the other 10 say? We don't have a chance. We do not, not going in there. We're like grasshoppers in their sight. We're not going in. And God says, okay, so what was the result? You're going to wander in the wilderness for 40 years till this generation dies out, and then we're going to go at this again. When they finally do get around to going into the land, you know what God says before they cross over Jordan and get in there? There was someone specific that I had you going after before you went into the land. I told you, don't do it in the land of Esau, because you know what the scripture says? That the descendants of Esau had already destroyed all the Rephaim out of their territory. You know who the Rephaim was? Those were the giants. It was the descendants of the giants. But there was a whole group of them up in Bashan, and God told them, that's where I want you to go, because before you go across into there, I want you to go up and destroy those giants that are up there. But they balked at going into the land, and all that got postponed until now when they're going into the land. And if you follow that path carefully, they have to go up to Bashan, and guess what? They have to do what they said they weren't going to do 40 years earlier. They have to take on those giants, and then they're going to cross over Jordan, and they're going to do the same thing in the land. By the way, when they get ready to do that, you know, and if you're among the giants, you think of them, they're all great heroes, you know, but do you think the giants ever retreated when God's people were having victory? Of course they did. And you know where they ran? They ran to the coast on the Mediterranean. Anybody know who's living on the coast of the Mediterranean over there? Those are people we call the Philistines. And that's why the giants show up again over there. So when David, by the time David comes along, you know what you have? You have the champion, Goliath of Gath, a Philistine city. And you know what David's doing? David's wiping out the rest of them. Okay, anyway, I'm just saying, you see things, and then one day you go, oh, you know what? God was not going to let that fall through the cracks. He was going to make them do that. All right, let me move on. So, just giving you an example of what I'm talking about here. I'm in the slower group. It just takes me a while. So, I have to hear it more than once. I am kind of a visual person. So, if you show me a chart, that makes way more sense to me than if I just hear it on the audio. Some of you are audio listeners. God bless you. You're very intelligent people. But for me, I have to see it. And when Billy would say, hey, we're going to redo the living room, and here's what I want on the wall, I would go, I just can't visualize it. Now, I know you women are saying that's because you're a man. Probably. But you know what? I can't visualize anything. And I'm just, okay. So let's move back to this. Yes, sir. Yeah. You're acting like yeah, keep going. Yeah. Nothing to see here, citizens. Move along. Okay. All right. So here's the question. Do we discount the people who are a little slower? No. Are they less important to the assembly? That's right. So our treatment to them, do we just kind of disregard them and act like they're an outlier? And no, we don't do that. Should we run off and leave them behind because they cannot keep up? All right, everybody's giving me the right answer. I already knew that you knew the answers to those questions. So we're going to take the time to do this here. And for those who learn quickly, because in this group you have folks that you hear at one time, you get the concept, it sticks in your head, and you got it. For the others of us, it takes us a while. And when we hear it the second time or the third time, we're still hearing stuff we didn't get the first time. So let me talk to the people who are fast learners. God bless you. Folks here, folks in Zoom, God bless you. I'm not making fun of you a bit. I'm going to ask you an important question. What is your responsibility to the rest of this body? What is it that should be going on in your mind because you get it more quickly? Because what is the temptation? If you get it more quickly, what is the temptation? To run ahead? Yeah, Richard, you got something?
Well, actually, yes. If you get it quickly, you should help instruct the others that are not getting it as quick.
Now, Richard's given us the answer to that. So if you're a fast learner, you ought to be looking for ways to help those folks that maybe are not as fast. By the way, and doing it out of godly love and charity, right? Yeah. Not all of, hey, all of you slow learners, come over here. Let me tell you, we get it, right? All right. So let's put it on the board. All right. So I'm just going to put help others. That's at the core of what Richard was saying. Somebody give me another one. What should be in your mind about this?
Value and esteem.
Okay. So we're doing that. All right. So what we're talking about doing is because we value and esteem them as fellow members. Thank you. What's another one? Okay, you're going to encourage them. How might we do that? How can you encourage someone who's feeling like, I just can't get this? How do you encourage someone like that? Okay, all right, let's give them credit for the things that they've gotten and go from there. What are you saying?
If you value and esteem them, and you go back through and then you encourage them on the things that they have learned,
That's what, yeah.
and then you impart the things that they need to learn, and they absorb it.
Right.
You've accomplished your goals.
Right. Okay. So y'all are saying a very similar thing here. Let's take them from what they do know. And by the way, everybody in this room has learned. Everybody on Zoom that I know of anyway has learned. This is not a group that doesn't understand about rightly dividing the word, that there's an Israel program and a program with the body of Christ. You have gotten that. And you do understand some things about sonship prayer. You have gotten that. And so you can, and if you can get those things, guess what? You can get any of it. What is a big temptation, the wrong thing to do in the minds of the people who learn quickly? If you're not careful, what will creep in to your thinking?
Big eyes and little U's.
Okay, big I, little U, complacency. Do you have something, Gloria?
Right.
Yeah, there's a opening there for conceit, and so the godly response to that. And this is one of the things I was trying to get out of you when I was saying, people who, learn more quickly. How should you be thinking about this? In view of what could, because there's always this thing about, come on, let's go, I'm going to get it. Now, I actually heard someone say one time, well, I'm going to get my sonship. That's exactly the opposite of what you ought to be doing. Exactly. This is a body. You don't ever chop your hand off and go, hey, we're leaving you behind, pal. We're sorry you're not functioning right, but oh well. So what is the thing? I'm trying to get someone to just say this. I'm after something specific here. Knowing that there's all these things that could be happening in your mind, and I gave you that last illustration about, come on, let's go. Really, what should be in your mind is, it's okay to say, yes, we do want to move through the doctrine. That's fine. But when you realize that you're part of a body and you're valuing and esteeming that part of the body, then you should be what?
Patient.
Thank you. Because here's what I wrote in my notes back when I put this book together. Content to go slower than I can go. Be content to go slower. Why? Because you value and esteem those other members. There's one other thing too. Think about how it feels to be one of those folks. I know how I feel about that when everybody else seems to be latching on to it, and I'm going, wait, what? It's kind of uncomfortable to feel that way because it makes you feel inadequate. We cannot allow those kinds of things to get rooted in this assembly. And so, and you've already said the last thing I wrote down in my notes, to be not only to be patient, but to encourage one another along. And I think there's a number of ways to do that. All right, so we're talking about learning differences, so let me just take you to this verse and let's look at it. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 22, and I know we're a little over, but just stick with me here. Nay, much more, those members of the body which seem to be more feeble are necessary. Wow! And those members of the body which we think to be less honorable, upon those we bestow more abundant honor. And our uncomely parts have more abundant comeliness. For our comely parts have no need. But God hath tempered the body together, having given more abundant honor to that part which lacked, that there should be no schism in the body. And that this is all about body language, right? And he said, but that the members should have the same care one for another. And rather one member suffer, all the members suffer with it. Or one member be honored, all the members rejoice with it. We already had this principle laid down for us earlier in Romans 12. Paul's already talked to us about this. Why is this showing up again in Corinthians? This is a book of correction. They ran off the rails with this, and they had the Romans doctrine, but they didn't do anything with it. For a while, it was just head knowledge, and then if it's only going to be head knowledge after a while, It won't even be that. It'll just be a dim memory. Oh, I've heard that before when it comes up. Yeah, but have you ever done it? That's the thing, right? So so let's go back to your note taker and let's fill in the rest of this so we can get this done. The next one is physical infirmities. Sometimes when we get older, those of you on Zoom and in this building who picture yourself that way know what I'm talking about. It is more difficult to hang on to what you learn. Sometimes your memory just doesn't work as well. For some folks, they get older and their memory is fine. So does that mean we should leave them behind? Does that mean they should throw in the towel and quit? Yeah, the answer is the same for both of those. No. So when we see someone with some kind of physical infirmity that is hindering their ability to the education, we need to take that into account. We need to be patient. We need to encourage them, and we need to be available to help them in that process in whatever way that we can. We have to be careful to take in these inequalities of the rest of this. So let me fill out the rest of your note taker for you here. So the next one is, that means new operations that are not given to you specifically in the scripture are now going to come into play within the framework of a local assembly. I already talked to you about the accelerated education. You know what that was? That was new operations. The Bible didn't tell you to do that. What it did is teach you that, and now you're supposed to look out and see the ways in which you can apply that. See, God's not interested in giving you a list of every single way in which you can do it. He's really just interested in generating that in you, and then you can figure that out, because every assembly is different. Okay, here's the next one. Condescend. And that's what, and by the way, what we're talking about, when you, because you value and esteem those other members, decide to encourage them and be patient with them and help them and will move at the pace that the body can move at, that is what condescending is. That's exactly what that is. And that has to be done for that, I don't know, did I fill in below that for you already? You already have godly reason? Okay, that's the godly, and so the motivation for that, we have to make sure that the motivation for that is godly. It's not, let me help you so we can get on down the road. That's not it. Yes, sir?
You know, that is exactly how God has been instructing us all the time, because we are not as educated on what He wants us, and He is being patient with us.
That's a good point. Yeah, I am really glad for His patience. Yeah, and long suffering. Yeah, absolutely. So, there's some things I was going to talk about here because of the time I'm not. I just want to say, Paul is saying, don't allow the inequalities that are in your assembly to create some kind of a discord or division or a distance or any of those kinds of things. We have to care for every member to the fullest extent that we can, and it means that we're going to have to be aware. We're going to have to be on the lookout for ways to be able to do that so we can discharge that office. The last thing in the verse is, be not wise in your own conceits. This is another one of those negatives that are given to us all throughout the book of Romans. Be not conformed to this world, a man not think of himself more highly, let love be without dissimulation. Don't be slothful in business. Curse not, remember, for those that persecute you, and now be not wise in your own conceits. Sometimes we get to thinking, because of what people own or the position they hold in a society, that is the measure of their worth, not to your Heavenly Father. So I'm going to give you a quick verse in Proverbs to make that point. The rich man is wise in his own conceit. Wait, what did Paul just tell us? Don't be wise in your own conceit. He says, the rich man is wise in his own conceit, but the poor that hath understanding searcheth him out. So you know what? Just because you may be wealthy doesn't mean you know it. This thing that we're talking about here. And by the way, it's not because you're poor is not a guarantee either. What he's saying is, it's not a matter of rich or poor. It's a matter of having this wisdom installed in your inner man. And so And by the way, I just want to take a moment, and then we'll do this last piece on your note taker, to say that in this circumstance that this church physically is sitting in, we have had some homeless people who have come through the door from time to time, and I am grateful to say that everybody who has come through that door has always been made to feel welcome. Now, I will tell you that when Travis came in the first time, and he wasn't saying anything to anybody, and he had that backpack, and he set it down right in the middle of that aisle, and then walked over to the edge of the building, was something that made you think, what in the world is going on here? But you know what? You know what though? And yeah, there was wasn't all smooth sailing, but you know what? He considered himself to be a part of this. And I am glad to say this assembly made him feel so. So those were not the things that we were looking at, but had a real desire for him to be edified. Last thing, he is in Abilene. He's got a job in Abilene. He's there in some kind of a program where they kind of keep track of that and make sure that he's still on an even keel and all that. And I've talked to him on the phone a couple of times. And in fact, if you want, I'll be glad to give you his number and call him up and see how he's doing. But he was it was like talking to no, it wasn't that bad. It was like talking to Gloria. It was very good. All right. So on your note taker, let's fill this out. The godly steps of action. I did want us to take time to put this on the board, but you know what? I don't have time to do that. Because no matter what the issue is, here are the things to do, I think, in the order they should be done. Because the number one rule in problem solving is always to identify the problem. If you can't do that, you're not going anywhere. Number two, if your problem is unchangeable, then thank God for the opportunity to be edified even with that problem. There may be something that's making it harder for you, but that's okay. Number three, we're going to need to be creative in dealing with those limitations that we notice. Now, I'm talking about it as though it is our own. So it'd be like me being creative in dealing with my own limitations, finding ways to make that work, finding a way to make it work, not throwing in the towel, not giving up, not walking away, not quitting. Okay, enough of that. Use your limitations to develop patience. If you have a limitation, let that be the catalyst for the development of godly patience in your inner man. We really need to spend time on each one of these, but if you've got it, you can think about this on your own. Next of all, number 5, be grateful for that which you do have. A couple of folks, I think Richard and Clifford kind of touched on that earlier. Be grateful for what you do have. Number 6, remember that God's ideal is in your inner man. My hearing's not as good. I'm not getting around as good as I used to. I can't remember like I want to. Yeah, but you know what? And we tend to value ourselves based on those kinds of things. I don't look as young as I used to. I don't have a full head of hair anymore. That's way overrated. But look, remember that God's ideal is in you, not this. All right, here's the next one. Accept help from your fellow members. It is difficult for folks to help you right off the bat because they don't want to seem to be intrusive or judgmental. So you know how to make that easy? Ask for some help. Then everybody feels comfortable. Otherwise, if I were to say to Clifford, hey, let me help you out here with this. You think I don't know? You think I don't understand? See, and I've hurt his feelings. Yeah, so that's all right. He's old. He'll forget tomorrow. He won't know it. All right, here's the next one. What were we talking about? What? Here we go. Number 8. Be as active. Note to self. Don't look at Clifford anymore when you have. All right. Be as active in your assembly as possible. In other words, you may not be able to do the things that you used to do. This has been true for people down through the ages, right? Be as active as you can. Do the things that you can do. I really, you know what, in all honesty, we probably should have divided this lesson into 2 parts, and I should have just taken the time to go through them. But you get it. You get it. So if you understand what we're talking about in verse 16, then what you have to do is go home from here and say to your Heavenly Father, what is it that I see anywhere in this assembly where there is some obstacle that may be hindering the edification of another member? And because I value and esteem them, I'm going to try to encourage them, and you can do that in a lot of indirect ways, and be patient so that I don't get all out of sort about it, and this whole body can learn together, can be conformed together. Okay. That's the end of the lesson today.